Hey, what's up there all you space lovers? It's Craziness of the Internet. We're back again with another factional warfare video in EVE Online. Today we'll be discussing the Minmatar Republic and what I would class as one of the more advanced factions in EVE Online, as they do mid, close, and long-range control fighting. But this does not mean that they are better than any other faction. They are just more secure for solo and small gang fleet combat. So because of this, to understand the Minmatar Republic's brawl, mid, and long-range tactics, we do have to break this into a 2-video series, as the Minmatar Republic does rely on heavily based shield and armor style tactics, with speed and agility as their main factor for controlling the battlefield. Hey, what's up there all you space lovers? It's Craziness of the Internet here, and we are back again with another video in EVE Online. Today in EVE Online, you guys, we will be discussing the builds for the Minmatar Destroyer. Now, I do wish you guys that there was a way for me to give you all of this information in a shorter way, but sadly, EVE Online is such an old and long and intricate game when it comes to the design of each of the ships and how they play out as their role in combat. But with that said, you guys, a lot of players over the years sadly have forgotten the power and the utility base of a lot of the ships in EVE Online. And I'm sorry to say that there is a lot of false information out there for how the ship should be played and utilized in the game, and a lot of the major builds over time that once was and once were popular, designed by me and my brother, passed around to our FCs among the factions back in the day. You guys today will see and understand how some of the older builds and the newer builds will play out in EVE Online, as I give you the best understanding of some of the best builds that the game can produce, and reminding yourselves, you guys, that the Talwar is not a weak vessel. I do see a lot of people in the game and a lot of players over time complaining that the Talwar does not really have a very good role, and that its only main role is good at F1 volleying in a mass fleet out in nullsec. Yes, they are very powerful with signature radius increase modules and using 20 or more in a group, as each one of them can volley over 1000 HP before you add in the reduction of resistances, but still that is very strong. So when you crack the 20,000 mark per volley, it does to an enemy FC and an enemy fleet become a pestering little ship. But I hope you guys do take everything that I'm about to explain to you guys and understand the destroyers in the Minmatar Republic. And I'm going to phrase something for you guys right here that I know a lot of you in the game over the years have heard, and it goes a little something like this: in Rust we trust. Now, for some of you, you guys might see that as a meme or a personal phrase or a saying, but it actually dates back to the creation of the Minmatar Republic and their ship design builds, and how they should be utilized on the battlefield and for their playstyle. And what I mean by that, you guys, is the lore of the Minmatar is that they used whatever they could find to create their ships and their vessels among the scraps of the factions while they were enslaved, thus creating the Minmatar ships that we see here. And what these all are, you guys, is these are a hybrid version of all of the other 3 playstyles into one. That is why in the old days, a lot of the elder players and a lot of the top PvP players do utilize and do understand and use the Minmatar ships. The other vessels do have core designs, but their builds sometimes remain limited to the output of what the ship can produce. But when it comes to the Talwar and other Minmatar vessels, when you reduce everything I just said and follow along with the old lore aspect to the saying of "in Rust we trust," you then can create what we call Frankenstein builds, and understand that the Minmatar Republic ships, every single one of the vessels, whether it's a frigate to a destroyer to a cruiser all the way to a battleship. I have seen the builds on solo capital ships as well, but I've personally never tested them out myself. I have had my time in capital ships and in massive fleet combat, achieving series victories and medals over the years, but understanding that the Minmatar race, you guys, as a class, is a massive utility based class of all of the factions in the game. To sum that up for you super fast, what that means is each one of their ships can have the core design of all of the aspects in one, or they can choose to be the aspect of a brawler, can choose to be the aspect of a structure tank, can choose to be the aspect of a shield master, can choose to be the aspect of a kiter, or can do one thing that most of the factions cannot, lot, and that is, can utilize and combine all three of these things into one, or can utilize and combine two of those factors into one, or two into another, or one into two, creating what we call Frankenstein builds, hence forming the ancient phrase, "In Rust we trust." Now I hope you guys do take all of what I just said in and understand that you're in for a special treat here, as a lot of these builds have never been seen in many years and a lot of players have not utilized them, and you yourselves, when you do utilize one of these builds, you will see that they are super powerful in their own right. But remember you guys, that in EVE Online, and I don't stress this enough to most of you, that in EVE Online there is no best ship. Each ship in the game is 100% situational, and I've tried to explain this to people for over a decade, but most of the players in EVE Online believe that it's either two things, DPS or hit points, and that will be your survivability. But in the end, the most powerful thing in the game, you guys, is EWAR and speed. Those are the two most powerful things in the game. It is not your damage output and it is not your survivability. It is, you need to apply your DPS or your survivability is useless because you're already dead. Now once you guys start to realize all this, whether you're a solo pilot, a small fleet pilot, or you roll around in huge fleets, you start to realize that the most powerful ship in the game is friendship. Because in EVE Online this is one massive social sandbox, and to basically do the most powerful things in the game and to use the most powerful items or ships, i.e. capital, and to be a part of some of the biggest things in the game, you would have to understand that you can't do it alone. You can take on ships and destroy other ships as a solo pilot, but in the end you cannot accomplish most of the powerful aspects in EVE Online as a solo player. Yes, you can play EVE Online solo, because I myself am a legendary solo PvPer, but in its essence of a game and its core design, EVE Online is one major social sandbox, but there is nothing more powerful than a pilot next to you and the power of friendship. Now that you understand the meaning of In Rust We Trust and that they are a hyper-class faction, you can see that the first build right here is the Structure Tank Brawler. Now this one will utilize the power of the Galente faction, as the Galente faction is the most powerful when it comes to structure tank and drone capabilities, and they are also the highest DPS output at close range, as they are the brawling faction. So right here we did utilize the Structure Tank Brawler, and if you look at the second build that I'm going to pop up on the screen now, this one right here utilizes the armor style build of the Amar faction. You're going to utilize mid-range control with your HP buff, utilizing that to your survivability. And then when we look at the third build here that I'm going to pop up on the screen now, this one will utilize the power of the Kaldari state, as this is the shield tank brawler. Now all three of these are brawler styles with rockets, and they will utilize the power of 7 rocket launcher 2s, as we do want to get as much DPS as we can out of them. Now remember you guys, you add on to that damage output per skill level that you do acquire with the Minmatar destroyer, and each one of those bonuses will give you right here a 5% bonus to your explosive, light missile, or rocket damage. At max skills of level 5 this will be 25% bonus, which does help a lot, as remember your role goal here is to smash and dash the little frigates. You can 1v1 destroyers, but keep in mind that your main goal here is to support your cruiser allies or to take out and support your little frigate friends against the other frigates. Also staying true to the Minmatar Republic's main faction role of agility and speed, not just the ability that they are a hyperclass faction of all of the other factions in the game, but they do get a 15% reduction in the micro warp drive signature radius penalty. Now here is a tip for a lot of you that you may not know, that the Minmatar Republic has some of the best ships in the game when it comes to low signature radius, and they are the hardest to hit. Hence when you acquire and add on to that agility with such a low signature radius, it becomes extremely hard to track them, especially when they are in angular velocity. But at times, to counter-react that style of play, if you do get pinned down by some kind of long kiter that isn't really paying attention, or you are being pinned down by those scram kiters or those mid-range brawlers, you do get a 50% bonus to your light missile missile and rocket max velocity. Now in all of these builds, when you do use any of those rockets, you can almost reach out to the 20-kilometer mark with your long range ammunition, and you can reach out to dual web scram kite range with your heavy DPS ammo, and that in itself becomes a very powerful asset. And now when you look at the Galente and the Amar style of the builds, they will utilize the power of trying to control the enemy with a defensive web. The Kaldari state is kings of application, and they do control the field when it comes to web control and applying any damage type. But here, when you do utilize the power of the hybrid capabilities of the Minmatar Republic, you sadly do lose the ability of the web, but you are trading that factor for a higher DPS output, as some of the smaller frigates that choose to only use one ancillary repper, not two, and some of them that are buffed, you can shred through them even faster, having this extra little damage bonus. This is why, you guys, when you look at a destroyer, and I simulate this build right here, and you look at the weapon system, each destroyer will always have an average of 6 to 7 guns, unless they are a T3 destroyer. Some of them only have 4 to 6 because they have other capabilities on their status quo. But understanding that when you are a destroyer facing a frigate, this is why a destroyer can battle 2 frigates at once, because you have the damage output of 2 frigates, and you basically are the tank of 2 as well. So do not forget, you guys, that the main role of all of the destroyers, whichever faction that you choose, whichever one you feel comfortable playing the most, and whichever style appeals to you the best, I would suggest always never letting anyone tell you what the best ship is in the game, because we all know that no ship is the best ship, that each one is situational. So whatever ship is comfortable to you and your playstyle in EVE Online, I would suggest that you always go down that path and not follow someone else's story. Now when we look at the defensive slots for these builds, you can see that in the Galente and the Amar one, we are going to utilize also a small ancillary repairer. Now this is going to give us more longevity against the small frigates, and will usually most of the time allow you to kill at least one of them, especially if you do get blobbed by 3 to 5. You can, with designs like this, be able to defeat 2 of your opponents, and possibly even be able to warp off, depending on what you chose to do in the fight, and whether you chose to take out the pilot that had you pinned down with the EWAR, whether you chose to take out the pilot that had you pinned down with the scram. Remember, you guys, all of these choices are yours, and that is where EVE Online will get unique in PvP combat, because you have all of these different style of factors coming into play, and you have all of these choices that need to be made on the fly. And on top of that, some of these choices become faster than the input of the game itself, so you do have players that will make mistakes over time, because we are all just humans, so things like that does happen. And you should never feel ashamed in the game for losing a ship or being defeated, because that is the purpose of the game. The whole story, you guys, is that we are all immortal and that we have unlimited clones, so the entire basis of it is to undock, explode, repeat. That's the point of EVE Online, is to just get out there, blow up some ships, have some fun with your friends. Now in the rig slots, you guys, we are staying true to the build's designs when it comes to them, and we are just buffing them. In the Galente one, I have added 3 small traversal bulkhead 2s, and in the Amar one, we have added Trimark armor pumps. Now I want you guys to really understand the Trimark armor pump 2s in the game, because it is really hard to break some of the HP buffed builds, especially when they do have logistic support repairing them on the field. That is why some of the HP percentile implants and the rigs and things like that are a little more expensive than the others, because it is a lot harder to chew through armor than it is to chew through shield or structure when it comes to impact of particles in the game. So if you do not want to spend as much ISK as these designs are, you can choose to lower the small Trimark armor pump 2s to actual 1s. You will lose about 4 to 500 HP bonus depending on the build, sometimes 1000, but you do save yourself around 20 million ISK. That is the plus side. So you could get a weaker design with friends and then build more of those ships, or you could use the more powerful build by yourself. And some of them we did have to use a small ancillary current router for giving ourselves more power grid output, as some of these destroyers do rely heavy on CPU or heavy on power grid output. That is the downfall of all of the destroyers, is that none of them are actually intent on CPU or power grid, they all actually make you struggle to design powerful builds. Also remember, if you are a newer player in the game, that I always do have the newer and alpha player friendly builds, and we will slap those on the screen right now. Now if you are a newer style player and your skill set is low, especially your skill points, just go ahead and join any factional warfare zone and use these lower tier builds and help join fleets and help yourself gain some in-game friends along the way. Do not tell yourself that because you are new to the game or new to EVE Online that you aren't viable for PvP. The entire game is based upon PvP, and it solely is and should be your main goal to get out there in PvP with your friends or by yourself, and should never be afraid to do it. Alright you guys, now that you understand the basic style of builds for the Tal War and the Minmatar Republic, let's get into some more intriguing style of builds right now. Alright you guys, now if we get into some more intriguing ways that the Tal War can be designed. Now this is good for solo PvP and also small gang of groups of 3 to 5. Now what you guys see right here is we are utilizing all of the bonuses from the Tal War's main destroyer skill set, and on top of that you guys can see that we have taken the route of In Rust We Trust and utilized the power of all 3 of the other main faction style of gameplay in the game into one style of a build. Now what makes this build really strong, you guys, is that you do have the ability to pressure a third target, meaning you know as a destroyer when you land on a couple frigates that you are guaranteed to kill the first one and that you can start applying to the second one. If you are engaged in situations where there is 3, you can use your small gremlin compact energy neutralizer and your small energy Nosferatu 2. You can pin down and possibly chase off your opponent by weakening their capacitor, or if you are in a straight 2 versus 1, you can completely nullify the second player or get the player that has you locked down with the scram. You can nullify them by slowly draining their capacitor. Remember you guys that this build is really powerful solo, and only if you stay true to the core's design of utilizing it for solo and small gang PvP and also hunting frigates. Alright, now you guys can see down here that you do need a 2% power grid implant. If you have max skills in all of your engineering assets towards combat, you actually will not need an implant, and if you do, it should only be a 1%, but I am missing 1 level towards my advanced weapon upgrades, which gives me that extra 2% that I would need on my weapons that's doing this right here. Also you guys, if you did not know this and you see the flashing bar right here and I hold my mouse pointer over it, you see how it says 101.62. To break that down, it's super fast for you. Anytime you see anything that needs CPU or power grid, hold the mouse pointer over the flashing bar, and the percentile above 100 is how much percent it is missing. So this one is 101.62, so that means I need 1.62% more power grid output to be able to nullify this, so thus I would need a 2% power grid implant. Now take a good look here you guys at how it says it depletes in 54 seconds. Now you have to make sure to turn your engine off when you're doing it, and if you aren't under that much pressure by your enemy or you've started to control the field, then start whittling your cycles down through your volleys. So let 2 or 3 volleys of your rockets go off, then hit a charge. As you can see that once you have them locked down with your NOS and your neutralizer, you become stable. This is what makes this extremely powerful, because within 20 to 30 seconds, enemy is applying a lot of their capacitor use to apply damage to you and keep you locked down, and now you are pressurizing their own stability. This thing does start to knock them down real quick, so do take that into account when you guys are using this build. So to stay true to the old In Rust We Trust, you guys, you can see that we have utilized a Republic Fleet medium shield extender, and we are sticking true to being a true brawler with our rockets by using a warp scrambler and a 1MNY compact afterburner. Now in my defensive low slots, I have utilized the power to add DPS to my barrage of rockets and utilize my survivability against my 2v1s and my 1v1s with my small ancillary armor repairer, because you guys, don't forget that when you land on a frigate or 2, it takes 2 frigates to combine to your basic structure, shield, and hit point amount. Any 2 two frigates of your choice. If you just look at them raw, their base stat skills, and you combine the armor, the shield, and the structure, you can see that they will be a little bit over what a destroyer has, but they are about equal. So knowing that with these buffs and things added on top of it, that you can withstand the little frigates and lay down firepower and just delete them right off the field. So in our rig slots, you guys, we are using the other capability because the small ancillary armor repairer becomes our Amar style of defending ourselves. And then in our rig slots right here, we have two small traversal bulkhead 2s, and that will become our Galente style of defenses when we are using this hybrid build. And sadly, because we do need a lot of power output for all of these, we have to use a small ancillary current router too. But all in all, when you do understand that, it does become extremely powerful, and you do add the agency hardshell 2 and the standard exile booster, which does give you an extra 25% to your armor repair amount on your small ancillary armor repair charges. And that alone in itself right there can defend you against 2 to 5 volleys from any small heavy DPS target. It can whittle down their DPS, making it viable for you to absorb. Also, you guys, I do not forget about all of the fast style players out there and all of the micro warp drive players, as they are needed just as much as an afterburner. So you do have builds like this one right here. Now this will utilize the same style and aspects of the other one, just the difference of this one is you cannot pressure your opponents with the small neutralizer. You actually have to feed off of them with your NOS. Now remember what I'm about to say very clearly for this style of build. When you get on top of your opponent and you know that you have them locked down and that they can't pull away from you, right click your micro warp drive engine and deactivate it completely. This will bring your capacitor stability up to over 7 minutes, and you'll be able to continuously keep your ancillary small armor repairer running even though you've used all of your ancillary charges. It will never turn off until the fight is over. This alone is a powerful move and a powerful ally to have. And never forgetting that right here we also do have the alpha and new player style of the build as well. Now if you are an alpha or a new style of player to PvP, even if you are a long time EVE Online player but you are new to PvP itself, I would suggest 100% to go out and link up with somebody that has a little understanding or an elite understanding of PvP and learn as much as you can from them. You will learn more by doing this than you would by yourself roaming around for a long period of time. Okay, so now that you guys see the power of this build and the utility of one of the solo roaming power Talwar builds, let's get into the final build now. This is a kite DPS support build. Now you can go out and solo with this build by yourself, but remember that all of the light missile, especially barraging destroyers, should be utilizing some kind of capability of support, meaning that they should be supporting any other vessel by volleying down the opponents with them, with their huge damage output amounts with the HP volleys. You guys can see right here that I am using 7 light missile launcher 2s, and I do have a 15MN Y-TA compact micro warp drive. And you guys, I don't stress this enough that you can see I have a warp disruptor too. Now when it comes to kiting in any vessel in EVE Online, just because you can attack and land your warp disruptor on your target doesn't mean that you want to right away. As a kiter, make sure that you apply some damage, especially before you dive and go all in for the tackle, until you know specifically that they cannot counter you with their speed. As make sure to pay attention to the velocity of your enemy on your overview, and if you see that they are afterburner fit and will never be able to catch you, then make sure to just go ahead and start utilizing your speed and agility against them and just lock them down and finish them off. Now I am also using a small capacitor booster too, you guys. Now why I do this is, you guys know by watching my videos and my playstyles, is that most kiting builds always have a problem with capacitor. So either they have to warp off the field, or they either are too weak because they wasted too many of their modules for agility, which forces them again to warp off the field. I like to have the ability to be able to have almost unlimited cap as a kiter, unless I am truly forced off the field, because this will allow me some stability with my small ancillary armor repairer, and that allows bleed effects into my body, and I can also withstand some bleed effects while I do catch those repairs, because I also do have 2 small traversal bulkhead 2s. So this gives me the ability of a little more survivability versus most other kiting vessels, especially the frigate ones. If they aren't going more than 5 to 6,000 ms and you are in a good volley range, you will be able to out DPS their output, and they won't be able to match you, and you'll just whittle them down and destroy them or chase them off the field. So if I put in the infernal missiles right here, you guys. You can see that the HP volley is over 1000. Now, to any small vessel, that is extremely powerful, but I also want you guys to pay attention to something that most people do not pick up on. So you guys did see that I added the Infernal Fury light missiles. Okay, so now I'm going to add the Scourge and take a good look at the DPS. All right, see, now we're still 117. Now I'm going to add the Nova. All right, you see how our DPS increased, and now we are doing a volley of 1237. That in itself is extremely crazy and will whittle down and destroy almost any small vessels, especially if they take a volley or two from 2 or 3 of these. 3 or 4 of these usually just deletes the target instantaneously if you guys volley as a unit. And we did over here add a small overdrive injector system, as it does take a low amount of CPU and power grid to add it on, and it does add to our race's base agility and speed and give us a little bit more power to our micro warp drive engine. And again, as always, we will put the alpha and new player friendly builds on the screen now. Alright, I hope you guys do now understand the power and capabilities of the Talwar and see some of the functionalities of the ship builds and designs that we have created over the years. And I hope that you guys do get out there and test out your In Rust We Trust and try the style of hybriding all of the 3 factions into one, as this is one of the main abilities and powers of the Minmatar faction. And as always, you guys make sure you do get out there and get some PvP into your system. And I hope you guys are enjoying yourselves out there and staying safe. And if you are enjoying my content, please do like and subscribe, as it does help me out a lot. God bless, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.